All right, this is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. To begin our conversation on spate of building collapse in Nigeria, here is a background report put together by Kenendule.
In recent times, Nigeria has been grappling with an alarming surge in building collapse, casting a shadow over the country's construction industry and raising serious concerns about safety standards. A report by the Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, (COREN), shows that between January and July 2024, at least 22 cases of building collapse have occurred in the country, with Lagos State accounting for 27.27%, Abuja and Anambra having 18.18% each, Ekiti and Plateau having 9.09% each, while Kano, Taraba, and Niger States account for 4.55% each. Current reports also indicate that from 2012 to date, more than 90 buildings have collapsed in Nigeria, resulting in the death of more than 150 people. The most recent disaster regarding building collapse in the country is that of the school building in Jos, Plateau State, where more than 20 students died, while 134 were injured. This was followed by another one in Kubwa, Abuja, where 5 persons were rescued, as well as another one in Maryland, Lagos, where 5 construction workers were killed. Experts attribute the increase in building collapse to a combination of factors, including use of substandard construction materials, poor workmanship, and weak enforcement of building codes. Public outrage over the frequent tragedies has sparked a broader debate about urban planning and the need for sustainable development practices in Nigeria's rapidly growing cities. As the search for solution continues, the urgency of addressing Nigeria's building safety crisis has never been clearer. On this episode of Good Morning Nigeria, guests shall be addressing issues around the spate of collapsed buildings in Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Ekene, for that background out there. Now joining us here to discuss spate of building collapse in the country, let me introduce Professor Samson Duna. He's the Director General, Chief Executive Officer, Nigeria Building and Road Research Institute. You are welcome, Professor.
Thank you.
All right. Also joining us here is Professor Sadiq Zubail Abubakar, President, Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, (COREN). Professor, you are welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning.
All right.
And we have also been joined here in the studio by Engineer Fadeyi Olaniyi, Principal Partner FAD Progress Engineering Limited, Civil and Structural Engineers and Consultants. A pleasure to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria.
All right, let's kickstart the conversation with Professor Samson Duna. I know that you are the Chief Executive of the Nigerian Building and Road Research Institute, and which means that you have carried out a lot of researches concerning the causes of these building collapse. Can you just let us in? What would you attribute to all these building collapse that we are having across the country?
Thank you. Good morning, viewers. Let me start by sympathizing with people that lost their lives, lost their properties, lost their investment because of a careless act of somebody somewhere who refused to do the right thing. Building collapse can happen due to natural disaster, like flood, like earthquakes, like phenomena that you and me, man, has no control over. But the issue at stake is not the building collapse that happened due to disaster. We are talking about the building collapse that happened due to human error, where someone somewhere refused to carry out his own task of doing the right thing. Let me give you a glimpse of what building is all about. We need to look at it first before we identify how building collapses. For instance, the first point, if you want to build a house, you have to identify your plot of land. Then, after getting your plot of land, you look for someone who is technically sound, like an architect who is the leader of the team. You give him an idea of what you want. Give him a dream idea. So the idea is, we call it client brief. You give him, I need a 4-bedroom, I need a 3-bedroom. Then the architect, who happens to be leader of the team, because everybody will key into his design. He comes up with a model to you to look at it, a picture of your dream building. After looking at it, then you take the architect to your land. Then the first thing an experienced person look at it is the land level, or is converging at a point. Is it slanting? It's a dangerous indicator that shows if the water is converging, if the land allows water to converge on a point. But if water spreads across, he said it is a little bit fairer. Then from there, the next thing is to know the property of the soil. Very, very important. That's an area where people overlooked it.
Okay.
You check the property of the soil. We call it geotechnical investigation. The idea of the soil gives you let me use the layman language. It gives you the strength of the soil in a nutshell. The strength of the soil in soil waterlogged area or clay soil is different from a rocky area. Someone will sit down somewhere, they will be given the responsibility to design. He has no idea of the soil. He will just make a phone call. Give me the soil bearing capacity of the soil, I will design a building. Without even visiting the site, without even looking at the condition, whether the land allow water to converge on a point or the water is running away from the point. The idea of the soil bearing capacity gives you the type of foundation that will come from it. It is a value you use to design your foundation. After that, drawings are coming out from the work. You have what we call the working drawings, which comprises of the architectural drawings, the structural drawings, the M&E, mechanical and electrical. Then you take these drawings to a government body that approves it. Who is the person approving this drawing? Is it technically sound in that aspect or not? If the person is not sound, at times this is the problem we find in the society. Someone assessing something he's not knowledgeable about. With all respect to other professions, these are architectural drawings, structural drawings, mechanical and electrical. You see somebody that is not even in that field, he's busy stamping approve on drawings that is not even knowledgeable about it. Okay. After getting your approval, then you move to the site. You take qualified people to the site, who are the people to construct your building. You look at the material to be used for the building. You look at people that approve it. Will they come to monitor you? And so on and so forth. After that, you come up with a law, a guide. For every location, there is the type of building that is adopted, allowed based on town planner's design. So you can see it's like a process, like a factory process. At any stage, if it is not done properly, you should experience a problem. For instance, if there is no geotechnical investigation, you use a small value of soil bearing capacity, you find a problem that the building will collapse due to design. If you use a material that is not good, a building can collapse. If you fail to carry out the normal supervision and monitoring, building will collapse because the person in charge will try to cut corners. I'm telling you. So building collapse generally, it is a process from the land to the design to the material to be used, lack of M&E, lack of quality of the things to be done, and if the building is not done in line with the standard procedure, you find out that something will go wrong. And once something goes wrong, it might end up in building collapse. So if you look at it generally now, in all these cases, nobody is afraid. Why? Because up to today, nobody has been jailed because he refused to do the right thing.
All right, Professor Oduna, thank you very much. If I take your prognosis of why buildings collapse incessantly, we will say, one, that most lands that are built up shouldn't be built because it's not going to be very easy to find the ones that are clean, given what you recommend or what you prescribe.
Okay, sorry, maybe you are not getting what I'm not saying. Land should not be built. I'm trying to say you should carry out an
Yes.
investigation on the type of
You
land.
said if water converges on any point,
For any land,
it is. I know that in many cases you find this.
Yes.
So that means that's why I said I'm moving ahead that many shouldn't have been built.
What I'm saying is that you should provide a foundation applicable to the condition of the land.
Yeah.
Okay.
If the land is slanting, bring out a design that takes care of that.
Now,
That is
who
carrying out the
stamps-
process.
Thank you, to give
having
it-
a test of the
Good.
soil
who
and all the
stamps
processes. Yes.
approved on documents? Because it would then mean most of these are government officials, am I right?
You are right.
And they are in position as per,
Yes.
maybe appointments, maybe. So are you saying as well that those who approve are not qualified to be in the positions that they occupy because these are mostly government officials?
Okay, for every state or every government has its own nomenclature. Some states have a board called State Development Board. And this State Development Board are responsible to approve all working drawings. But who approves it? With all respect to other professions like town planners, there's a place you go, you see that a town planner is busy approving drawings from structural. A structural design is supposed to be checked by someone that knows the design. Building is like a human being. It has legs, it has hands, it has a head, and it has everything. So the footing is called the foundation, the leg, foot. Then the pillars are the legs. Each item needs to be designed properly and provided and checked. For instance, it's like setting an exam and marking it, you don't know the answer. You are marking an exam that you don't know the answer. Why? You are busy approving because you cannot design. How do you go back to approve something that you don't know how it is designed?
Okay.
For instance, now, me, I'm a structural engineer. When I look at a story building, I know the members of each structural drawing. If I look at a size that is not adopted to the load, I say this is a problem. But someone will say, go and pay the required fee. When you pay, you come. He stamped it, approve, approve. What are you approving? You don't know what you are approving and you are just approving for it to stand? So the idea is that we need someone that knows his onions very well.
Okay.
We need someone that is structurally sound
All right.
to assess these drawings, to know that these drawings is good or bad.
Okay.
If something is wrong with the drawing, how do you correct it then?
Okay, Professor Samson Duna, thank you very much. We need people that are well informed, concerning building structure. Now, let's bring in the president of Quoran, Professor Sadiq Abubakar. Professor Duna has laid the foundation here, highlighting the processes that needs to be followed before a building is built or approved and all that. From your own perspective, how effective are the current building regulations and enforcement? Because it says something which is very vital, that until we begin to see sanctions, on defaulters, these incidents will continue. So what's your take on that?
Thank you very much. I think we will probably need to go a little back and to answer this question of effectiveness of regulation and enforcement and even sanctioning.
Mechanism, yes.
We need to recognize that in the process of what my colleague mentioned, there are professionals that are licensed and certified in all that he has said. Let me take the first one, the issue of soil geotechnical or geophysical investigation. These are supposed to be done by accredited, certified laboratories in this country. And it is current that accredit such laboratories that have the requisite facilities and the personnel to be able to make sure that those values, that every particular soil has been mapped out and has been defined and has been evaluated to know its, like he said, capabilities. Now, often, I can tell you, we have about 14 such laboratories under the Federal Ministry of Works and about, I think, 7 private. Many are not actually functional. In his own institute, Nibri has a very functional one. We know of some private, about 7 or 8 of them that were accredited. But they are very inadequate for the country. And often, like he said, these are not properly done. So you just get somebody, like he said, somebody will just stamp. I'm sorry to use the word syndication, syndicate. You just stamp and you get certification of geotechnical results. So right from the word go, that has been compromised. And it involves individual professionals, laboratories, in that regard. Then coming to what he said, the design, the drawings, and what have you. Again, these are areas of professionals, engineers, architects, builders, quantity surveyors, and all these have regulatory bodies. In this regard, I will say that my colleagues are doing the best they can because they know that section is fairly regulated and we can enforce that because if you don't do the right thing, who design, we see the name, we have your seal, we can trace you, so reasonably those designs and drawings and approval at professional levels are, I would say, reasonably regulated and enforceable.
Okay.
Right? Then going beyond that, when you don't have all these packages, then you now go to actualize the building processes. Again, this is where we now have what we call the Department of Control, Development, and what have you, where the government officials, in the respective department, in the state or in FCT here, will now have to approve those designs and to allow you, to go to site and begin to construct. Now, for me and for Koren, that's what we call, currently, our reality in this country is what we call the dark room. The process of construction in a building site. To me, that is one area that we need as a nation to open up. What I mean by opening up is we need to sit down and clearly map out the procedures. I'll tell you some information. There are documents that we are supposed to have. When you want to construct a building, first you need what you call the building plan. You have what you call the construction quality control and quality assurance plan. We have what you call buildability and maintainability plan. There are about 6 different plans that are supposed to be documented, cited, and you identify who does what. And then when you start the construction, you are supposed to have what you call design review team. Those that design and the team that will construct, like you said, supposed to be having meeting regularly on site so that we'll be able to see compliance. Are we complying with the design? For instance, when you are building a skyscraper that's supposed to have the enforcement, reinforcement road, let's say 16 mm, somebody must come and check, are we having 16 mm in this building, in a particular column or a beam? Or we're having 12, like you said, we are cutting, we are cutting corners and what have you. Because of the inflation, the sand and cement mixture ratio is maintained as designed, or because of the cost of cement, that has also been reduced. So there are a lot of issues that has to do with enforceability and compliance with the design during construction. And a lot of things here comes into play. I will say that Koren established that we do not have a clear procedure, transparent, even though we have it, but we don't see it being followed in any building site.
Any?
Most building site, because you see, for instance, when you employ, when a developer or an owner, employ him as a structural engineer, and the developer want to compromise in terms of reducing the cement or changing the road, because of the cost, it has multiplied, and he refused to compromise, he will remove him, he will dismiss him, and there is no law that protects that professional, either the engineer or the builder, and then he will go and bring a quack who is not licensed, who is not certified, and he will continue with the job. So a compromise has already taken place, and under the radar, under the what we call the regulatory procedures, we do not have the mandate to sanction that owner or that developer.
The person cannot report to the necessary authority.
He is supposed
operation.
to.
Yeah.
He's supposed to, that I have been sacked and there is a compromise here.
Yeah.
Once that happens, the procedure is the regulators like Corel, like Cobol, like Akon, supposed to go to site and then give a stop work order.
Okay.
And then maybe eventually, if the team persists, you know, with the checklist, they are supposed to now say even close site. You close that site, stop the work completely, close the site. Now, these are procedures that need to be standardized. We need to open that dark room for two reasons. For us to be able to have evidence-based documentation of who does what, who is culpable. Like he said, who is not doing his job, whether as an individual or as an organization or as the owner or the developer or whoever, so that we'll be able to trace, so there will be traceability, and then we'll identify the culpable individual or parties so that we can punish. But as it is now, generally, that process of construction is a dark room. When you come, you will not see the evidences that will allow you to do forensic investigation to identify the culpable parties. And more so, immediately a building collapse. I will connect you with this. You will see that because of the urge to save life and properties, we destroy evidences.
Okay.
Yeah, we destroy evidences on site. What you call engineering failures investigation is a highly professional technical procedure. Once you, for instance, once you go to a site of building collapse, there are some, immediately you are supposed to barricade the place so that people don't touch the evidences, because immediately you start seeing the type of roads, the reinforcement roads, the rubbles of the cement, you know, the concrete and what have you. You can easily identify, because you can easily connect with the design.
Okay.
And then you, for instance, if in the design is 16 mm, and then on the building collapse you saw what you saw there is 12 mm, 13 mm. You know, even at the reinforcement issue, there were compromise. And then when you now see a building site, you take the rubbles, and then you use your hand and then you crush it. A concrete, you just crush it. You know there was a compromise in terms of cementing and what have you. So we don't appreciate that. Often in this country, that immediately, of course, like I said, it is because of the urge to save life and property. But in many other climes, investigation of engineering failures is a technical, highly skillful and professional, task that we need to recognize that. In fact, in many instances, you find that you have what you call licensed and certified investigators. I'll give you one good example so that you appreciate. The only thing that we see functioning in this country properly is when you have a plane crash. It's an engineering edifice. As far as we are concerned, current, that's one of our aspects. Immediately you have a plane crash, who do you look for? Certified licensed international investigators that will come, that will be flown out from somewhere. They are commissioned. They come and then they'll start looking for all the information. Particularly what comes to mind open now is the black box. Now, in Nigeria, no any other, I'm sorry to say this, no any other engineering edifice or infrastructures collapse that is given the due regard of formal investigation. When we have the national a failure of our national grid, to us engineers, that is a failure of an engineering infrastructure. Often nobody talks about investigation. The only thing we had is TCM will go and repair. A recent example is the collapse of the road between Kano and Maiduguri in Bauchi State, what we have. Clearly, to many of us, we know that is an engineering infrastructure failure. Commendable, the minister was there physically, and Mr. President has already urged him to go and fix that road. But to us as engineers, the first thing we will expect to happen is to investigate, because that road is still under construction. And it fails. So we expect that there should be a commission of investigation that will investigate how did that road collapse. Because it's an engineering infrastructure failure. It's not only about the building. So I'm citing these examples to tell you to show you the importance of investigation of engineering infrastructure failure. and building is one of them. You know, so the procedure is, I will say, basically two things. We still have legislative gaps as far as I'm concerned. Because in all the sanctioning and the punishment in terms of these areas of building collapse, if I come back, you see that 95% of all the effort is about the professionals, the engineers, the architects, the builders, all of us. There is reasonably control in the area of investigation, of misconduct, disciplinary tribunal, and sanction. Because all of us have those procedures.
Okay. All right.
But 90% of the culprits are outside the professional bodies, are the owners, the developers, and what the contractors. And in this category, there is no law, even with us as current and other professionals, that covers them to be able to investigate them, to sanction them. And like he said, that's why nobody, and you find that often, most of the infractions are being led by that category in the country now that has no any legal coverage to be able to sanction them.
Unfortunately, Professor Abubakar, because you have also admitted that investigations don't take place, it will be difficult for us to absolve your members of blame in all of this, because except you want to say that your members are never involved where there are such breaches. Because of quackery. Which will be difficult to ascertain.
I agree.
Because there is no investigation.
I agree. No proper investigation.
Engineer Ladi, let me ask, typically, at a building site, a construction site, how many engineering professionals are typically involved from start to finish?
Yeah, let me start by joining others to sympathize with the bereaved. And I wish the injured quick recovery due to this menace of collapse. Yeah, the number of engineers we expect on the building construction site depends on the magnitude.
I'm talking about the professionals now. Is this structural? Is it a building engineer? Is it electrical?
It's all right.
Is it?
It's all right. Yeah, when we talk of in the built environment, you have your structural engineers, you have the builders, you have your quantity surveyors, you have the architects with their own roles, but a system working together.
Can one company, as I have come to see in some cases, have all of these professionals such that you are given a contract to a company that has all of these professionals and they just go there, deploy, okay, you do this, you do that, and then they get to work?
Yeah.
That also applies.
Yeah. You don't need to have a single company that have all those professionals. For example, when you see some of the construction signboard, you will see the names, the client, the contractor, Emma, Idas Mechanical, the architect consultant, the structural consultant. You see all this. And then before that, you see the geotechnical, which may not appear on the signboard because that would have been carried out during the course of the designing of the foundations, although that can be monitored through the process of the constructions. But you see the names listed with different addresses and different name of companies. It's not necessarily you have in the single company, and at a company you can have all these.
Okay. So why do you think that people shy away from, getting engineers like this? All of them get an architect to do this initial work, like Professor Duna initially said. You have an architect come to do his own, a structural engineer or a building engineer. I'm not even sure if there's a difference between a structural engineer and a building engineer. In bits and pieces, like, why do you think that people don't go to that extent of thoroughness?
People do go,
Maybe a
It
few?
depends on the magnitude of the building. You cannot be talking of probably a tall building, 10 stories and above, that will not have all this. That's the magnitude. But a bungalow, or maybe just a duplex, you may not have that numbers of the
Why?
professional in terms of cost and in terms of the sensitivity. In terms of the sensitivity of the building, yes, every building is sensitive. But when you talk of just a bungalow, a story buildings, and then you want to have about maybe 10, 20 people, professionals on that project, it may not be cost effective. But when you're talking big structures, relatively 10 and above, whereby you are not just looking at yes, at a 10-story building, unit frame structure will be okay, and definitely you are going to have your shear walls for the shaft and all the rest, which is okay to withstand your sway, that is one load here and there. But when you still go for that, even your shear walls and your frames may not be enough to withstand the sway. When you're talking of 30, 40-story buildings, that's what we call outriggers. At maybe 4-story. Outriggers is like someone skipping. Is it skating you call it? The more you stretch out your hands with a pose when you are skipping, the more balance you have. That's what outriggers looks like at different levels. So at that point again, you will need more hands, experts in those areas to come in. So you continue to build the numbers as it demands the scope of the work.
Okay, thank you very much, Engineer Adeniv, for your contribution. Let's come back to Professor Duna now. You know, earlier on, when you listed the processes and also the challenges, especially the challenges of the approval, those who give approval in government offices, you mentioned their inadequacies as a result of lack of adequate knowledge. Do you, I mean, your institute and also Current, do you discuss with government concerning this particular issue, or is it as a result of corruption? You know, because we know that there is corruption practically in every spheres of, endeavor in this country. So do you from time to time have, discussion with government concerning this particular issue? And also, how can government ensure that building owners and developers prioritize safety, over profits?
Okay, thank you very much. First and foremost, as our agency, Nigerian Building and Road Research Institute, what we do is basically research. We carry out investigation. We identify problems and provide solutions in form of recommendation. As of today, we have intervened in more than 70 cases of building collapse in Nigeria.
Okay.
Out of our study...
Within which period, sir?
No, starting from maybe 2012 up to now. Over 70 cases that collapse, though we don't have
the result of your researches, do you provide them for the government?
We do. I have some copies here, which I would like the viewers to see quite a lot. Technical reports. All the investigation we do, it ends up in form of a technical report like this.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Individual cases.
Individual cases
end up with booklets
come up
like this.
And we identify relevant stakeholders, we distribute the copies to them. So in all our investigation, we identify 5 paramount cases of building collapse. And the factors that ranked first is the use of substandard materials.
Okay.
And the good thing is that in Nigeria, we use just 2 materials to build our houses most of the times. Steel and concrete. That is what we call reinforced concrete. Steel is basically a factory product. You go to the market and buy. In your own assumption, you might be thinking what we are buying in the market is standard. Whereas in the real sense, the quality of steel most at times in Nigeria is in doubt. We in NIBRI have been carrying out investigation on various quality of steel produced in Nigeria and the one produced outside the country. The result is another case of study. Maybe this forum will not be comfortable for us to discuss the property of steel that we have discussed and find out that most of the properties of steel, for instance now, the tensile property of steel standard expected, we have about 4 or 5 categories. We have tensile property of 460, FY 460, FY 410, FY 250. These are technical terms.
Yeah.
It's called tensile property.
Okay.
FY is a value you use in your design for calculation. By standard, it says 460. But take the steel and go and measure in the lab. You discover that where you're expected to get 360, you're getting 395. Where you're expected to get 410, you're getting less than that. The 250 mild steel that we're not getting it. Who is at fault now? Is it the person buying it in the market? Or there's a body that's supposed to cross-check the quality of this material in the market
produced.
as it is being produced? SON are doing their best because they are responsible to do that. But now, before they were at the port, where this thing should be nicked when you are importing some things, but they say that the bureaucracy at the port are so many. SON was removed from the port. So they are supposed to be chasing this material in the market and identifying if the quality of these materials are there or not. The other material is concrete. Concrete is what the contractors produce most of the times. And that is why they cut corners. Every element, when you design it, it has to do with the grade. For instance, the foundation, they will tell you use a grade of 35. Grade 35 is the mixed proportion you put to get a grade. For instance, in concrete, for you to produce concrete, you use cement, sand, gravel, and water. We call it 1:2:4. These are ratios of material you mix to get a particular strength of concrete. Grade 20, you say 1:2:4. Mix 1 of cement, 2 of sand, 4 of gravel. We specify water cement ratio, you get a grade.
Okay.
So, for instance, every element that you know, either it is a beam, it is a slab, it is a column, or a pillar, a lawyer will call it pillar, a footing, foundation, they are specified grade. A designer, once he has finished design, he will tell you, use this grade to produce it. The idea of building collapse is that when the quality of the material is good, even when it collapses, you see a member standing, not disintegrating. But when a member collapses, you see steel going this way, the concrete going this way, as if someone has hit them to separate them. The entire disintegration, there is no proper bonding. That is a good signal to tell you that quality of material have been compromised. That is one. So we were able to carry out research in all our findings. The factor that ranks highest is use of substandard material. That's one. The second factor is design problem. Someone will design a story building, maybe design a building that is supposed to take maybe 10 floors. And someone will tell you that, it has taken 10 floors, you can add 1 or 2, it can still stand. When you add 1, it stands. You added 2, it stands. Say, add another 1. In the process of adding, you hardly know, it will come and collapse. So you can see the design has been faulted. Design became the second paramount factor. Why? Because the design is not done properly. For instance, now the collapse building in Jos, I set up a committee. I was there personally to carry out the design. What is the cost of this building collapse in Jos? The committee submitted a report just last week. I'll be going to Jos to do a press conference with respect to what transpired in Jos. But from the preliminary studies, I looked at it. The building was not even designed. There is no working drawings. The foundation was in doubt. There is no even what we call shear reinforcement in the foundation. Reinforcement are not there. The building is just resting, part of the columns are just resting on the mere ground with no reinforcement to take care of the footing. So it's another ball game entirely. Because when you look at it from the video we have seen, you discover the steel, as if the steel was packed at one side while the concrete is packed at the other. Total disintegration. Purely there is no bonding. Property of material is well compromised, and at the same time, there's a design problem. So you can see the factors responsible are multi-dimensional. The third factor which we discover is the geotechnical investigation. If you look at it, in all these building collapse, most of these buildings fail during the rainy season. A building will be standing during the dry season, but once rain has started, the foundation becomes saturated, the soil becomes saturated with water, the bearing capacity becomes very small. You discover that the building collapsed during the rainy season. Why? Because the geotechnical investigation was not carried out properly.
Okay.
So most buildings, if you look at it, 60 to 70% of buildings collapse most times during rainy season. Why? Because we didn't carry out the design properly, there is no geotechnical investigation. If the investigation is done properly, you design a member that will carry the condition of the environment. You know the depth where the soil is strong. You know the type of foundation, because there are different types of foundation. We have the strip foundation, we have the part foundation, we have the raft foundation. So each of these foundation goes in line with the condition of the soil, the structure and the load that the soil is expected to carry. So you provide a foundation suitable in that aspect. The fourth one is lack of supervision. It's just like saying, I'm giving you an assignment, go and do it. I'll come and check. Take a visit to people working in the site. Say, give me a sample of what you are working on. In your presence, they will give you a very rich sample. The quality of concrete they will give you is very rich, everything. But as you are turning to go, they go back to their shady business. That is where the cutting of corners comes in line with what my president says. Where it is designed that you use Y16, for instance. You say 20, because designer will tell you everything about building. Use 20 Y16, it means the number of rods should be 20. Y is high yield steel. 16 mm is the diameter of the steel. It gives you clear in terms of specification. But people try to cut corners. Instead of using 20, they say use 16. Open the spaces. Reduce the size of the reinforcement. It's a very big amount of money they are trying to cost because it will stand. Someone will say, no, this one is too big. How can he say I should use Y16 here? I can use Y12, it can still serve the purpose. So you can see people try to cut corner because of lack of supervision. Let me inform you that when a structure is ready to be cast, someone must come and supervise and give the directive. He gives in form of instruction. These reinforcements are okay. Go ahead and cast. Then he append his signature. That is what is expected. But hardly do people go there for supervision. That is why in part of one of my presentation that I did, I mentioned that professional bodies should be involved when constructing a very big structure. Professional bodies.
Do you think we have enough professional, bodies, or let me say, members, to carry out all these supervision? Do you think we have enough? I mean, going by the rate of buildings, the number of buildings that's springing up, in the cities of Abuja, Lagos, Kano, Port Harcourt, and all that. Do we have?
We do have professional bodies. All they need is motivation. For instance, now a building going on, I suggested in my paper that the cost of the building and cost of supervision should be inbuilt in it, so that professional bodies should come up and visit the site. When there is a periodic visit from professional body, it instills fear on the person doing the job to do the right thing. From the day he receives approval, nobody visits that site to the extent until the building is completed. It gives him the liberty to do whatever he wants. If there is a periodical visit, either from professional body, because the regulatory body try to regulate the human people, the human resources are there, partners involved, Koren will come and say this person is qualified or not, and so on and so forth. And depending on the mandate of Koren, whatever they do, because they can sanction their personnel that do not meet up the standard. So here I'm talking about supervising the project. Periodic visit. Go and check to see. You see, every casting you do, you're supposed to have a sample of the test result. This is the quality of clay we used to cast this floor. Or do you have a test result to show for it? They normally cast cubes, put it in water, test steel. Any material that you use, you need to check and test to ensure that you are using a standard material. Then after the supervision, I'm talking about human personnel involved. I'm of the opinion, though my opinion might differ. I've been telling my president most of the times. I said I want a situation whereby people working in the construction sector, their license should be reviewed from time to time. Someone graduated from school for the past 20 years, he has not gone for any training up to today. What are we talking about? There are a lot of technology that has advanced. You are going with archaic system. There are a lot of facilities, there are a lot of ways of doing things. In design there are three things. You design for safety, you design for durability, and you design for beauty, artistics. So these three, you have to put it into consideration and come up with a cost that is affordable. So here we are talking about someone who is given the mandate and responsibility of coming up with a structure that will stand. And he has not gone to forth any training. How many workshops has he attended? Koren should come up with good training procedure or professional bodies. Anybody that fails to go into it, you will withdraw his license. Then, after 3 years or 5 years, depending on the duration, license should be, in the medical sector, licenses are renewed every 3 or 5 years. That should also be imbibed in the construction sector. So that people should sit up. Personnel are taken care of. Then we come back to construction material. We look at it from the factors responsible for the building collapse. Then we'll start addressing it from there. If personnel are there, use of quackery. Let me tell you, for instance, there is a project that was advertised in terms of bidding in my agency. I look at the profile of the company, very nice, beautiful, full of professionals. Once the contractor wins that project, visit the site, you will not see any of these people there. None. All he did is he borrowed the credentials of people, attached it, rich, he could get the job, and he's even executing the job without the professionals. So these are areas that we want Koren and other professional bodies. Top Rec is there, Arcon is there. Any professional that gave his papers to use to bid a job, he should be sanctioned if he's not directly involved in the project. Most of these projects you see, profiles, and they are not working there. The contractor just used that to get the project. When he has gotten the project, he bid for the project, he won the project. At the point of execution, you will not see any professional there. That is why I'm agitating for periodic visits.
But what's the imperative in having professional bodies get some money, which we call motivation, for them to visit? Could they do this just as their professional calling? Is there an imperative?
Sorry, this is taxing. How many construction companies do we have? Yes, how many projects are going on? How do they use it? How do they fuel it? I'm not saying pay them. Provide for them. I'm sure professional bodies can fit in. How do they go to the site? They need a vehicle to go. How many sites will they visit? The man-hour spent. What I'm saying is that the cost of supervision should be embedded in the cost of the project, so that that money will be removed and given to professional bodies, so that they have a timetable, a team. You are covering this location, visit this. You are covering this. I'm sure if some measures are put
planning as well.
Thank you. If some measures are put into place, this building collapse will reduce. It is not a rocket science.
But do we also have standard materials in the country? Do we have standard materials that fit to every specification?
We do. As I said,
locally.
We do. Nibri has carried out quite a lot in area of affordable alternative construction materials. But for instance now, steel, as I mentioned to you earlier on, steel is a factory product. Everybody look at steel. It's good. When you go to buy steel, will you be doubting anything? You see Y16, will you doubt? But take a vernier caliper, visit the site you want to buy steel. You say, give me Y16, I want to buy it. You say, this is Y16. They will ask you, is this foreign or Nigerian product you want? You say, I want foreign. You say, foreign? Fine. This is the price for foreign. I want Nigeria, fine. This is the price of... But visit there with a vernier caliper. They say Y16, measure it. You will not see Y16. You see 15.2. Measure the length. Take it, cut part, put it in the machine to give you the elongation, to give you the tensile property. It will tell you that this material does not fit into the standard.
Okay. Okay, Professor Duna, thank you very much. You've raised a lot of issues there. Let me come to the current president now, Professor Abubakar. Some of the issues he raised is the updating of knowledge of your members, which I want you to speak to. And also, how can we benefit from other climes, where we hardly hear of building collapse, in foreign countries, that's the international best practices. How can we, what can we learn from them?
Thank you. On the what we call MCPD, mandatory professional development, the DG need to be updated that there is already what we call IPEC, Engineering Professional Examination, that involves NSE, Nigerian Society of Engineers, NATI, the Nigerian Society of Technicians, NICET, Technologies, and NAEC, the craftsmen. Now, we have sat down and developed this system that all the members of the engineering cadres, including now even the artisans, because of the national skill qualification that we are now working on, must undergo training in 4 areas. What you call the 4 Gs: knowledge, skill, proficiency, and competency in your jurisdiction. For the engineers, engineering; for the technologists, technologies. And then they will have to get a certification from the professional body, what you call CPU, Professional Development Unit, that they will earn. And once they do that, they will now come to Koren to renew their licensing. Okay. This is already in place. We have started it. Because like you rightly said, you must update your 4 Gs: the knowledge, the skill, the competency, and the proficiency in your area of mandate. This is already been done. And as you know, our amended Act of 2018 did not only restrict contractors and consultants with registration certification of Koren only. Now it has added the renewal of licensing, of practicing licensing. For individuals, it's every year, and for firms, it's every 2 years. Because we must see element of professional development, even in the organization, that will allow you to have an updated, licensing to practice. Okay. And this we have circulated to everybody, including, agencies like BPP, because often, like you said, once you have the Korean registration certification, that's the only thing you need to win a contract. Now the case is different. You must have the practicing licensing renewal, which is now for individuals annually. And so when we go to site, a construction site, we have a checklist. We have sat down with the Minister of Housing and Urban Development last 2 weeks, and we are already finalizing that checklist. There are about 7 different checklists. I'm sure we are going to involve NIBRI to come and make input. We are together with ACON, SOCON, COBON, all the professional and the built environment. We are developing a checklist that will allow us to do the second point you raised, the regular inspection. And we say we cannot do it simply. We must agree on templates. When you go to now inspect, the first indicator we said, the personnel, who are on this site, based on the approval given to, of that contractor. Are they on site? Are they registered? Do they have their practicing license updated? That's checklist 1. Second checklist is the material you mentioned. What are the materials? How are we complying with that? What are the tests in the laboratories and what have you? The third one is our documentation. All those plans that are supposed to be on site. So we have developed a checklist, and the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development is very excited. Okay. Korea has developed that. He is also developing that. We say we'll harmonize and we'll get these things. And the essence of this is to be able to now light that dark room, as we call it. Put light in it so that let's see everybody as you practice. And so that we'll be able to now have evidence-based, KPIs that will identify the culpable party who does not do what he's supposed to do.
What of those that are not affiliated, those that are not your members?
Good. Like I said, that is the legislative gap that we identified. And for instance, the quacks. The quacks are not under Koren or Akon or what have you.
They're engineers, but they are just not your members.
No, they cannot be. You cannot be. Koren doesn't have members. We have registrants. Yeah. It is the association that have members. Okay. You see, we are a regulatory body. You can have. You can be a member of NSE, Nigerian Society of Engineers, or member of technologies. All these are the associations. Okay. But Koren have all these people as registrants. Okay. You cannot answer the name engineer if you don't have correct registration. And that's why we call them quacks. Even if you graduate from a university with a degree of engineering, and you do not pass through the associations to register, and you do not come to Koren to also register, you are a quack when you practice. Just like a medical doctor. If you don't go and do a housemanship, you didn't do residency and what have you, you cannot go and practice as a doctor because you are a quack. So, like you said, and that's what I said earlier, that about 70% of the person that are having infractions within the built environment are actually not under the radar of the professional bodies, not under our radar, like the developers, the owners, the contractors, the developers, the consultants, and the quacks. Often, these are the majority. That when, like he told you in his report, you see that when a developer, withdrew a professional who wants to maintain his integrity, he will sack you.
Okay,
You understand?
Professor Abubakar, just hold on your thoughts there. The director is calling for a break. When we come back from the break, you will just continue from where you stopped.
Very well.
So we take a break now. The conversation continues. Stay with us. Yes, thanks for staying with us. You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. And we still have our guest here. We're talking about the spate of building collapse in the country. And before we went on break, the current president, Professor Abubakar, you were speaking on the need to upgrade, the knowledge of your members, and also, learning from other climes, what we can learn from other climes concerning safety of building in the country.
Thank you. The second aspect, I think, is Nigeria has, I want to inform us that we have joined the League of Nations in the engineering perspective. Nigeria now is a member of what you call the Washington Accord under the International Engineering Alliance. That means that our training and educational system has been accredited by the international body, and they have found at least that of the university that produces engineers comparable to what they have internationally. So last year we were made members of the Washington Accord, and we are making all effort to make sure that we also join what you call the Sydney Accord for the technicians, and then the Dublin Accord for the craftsmen and artisans. In our assembly that is coming the next 2 weeks, the chairman of the Dublin Accord, global chairman, and that of Sydney Accord are coming to Nigeria to initiate the process of assessing us. What this means is that a Nigerian engineer or technician or artisan or craftsman is comparable in terms of knowledge, skill, and competencies to be able to practice in other climes. So if we can do that, then we must showcase that at home. And so the areas that we are already, collaborating with the associations to be able to have this mandatory professional development has come to stay, and we are already, making it a global system, deploying technologies in that. And the other aspect is that in this particular subject matter we're discussing, the issue of building collapse. To us engineers, we call it engineering infrastructure failure. And the gap we identified is we must develop what you call the critical mass of certified licensing investigators of failures of different types. Across the, all we are discussing here is in the construction and building sector. I want you to go back to other sectors like oil and gas sector, communication sector, aviation sector, transport sector. All these are sectors that we know we have huge engineering failures. And so we are already in discussion with the DG NIBRI and with the Chartered Institute of Fraud and Forensic Investigation to come out with curriculum that will allow us to train, certify, and license, what you call engineering failures investigators in this country, so that we'll be able to, for once, have this critical area. We term it and we own it, so that we can even start exporting certified licensing investigators of engineering failures to other countries. So this is something that we are very mindful about this, because this is in line with the international best practices, and we're also keying into that, not only in the building area, but in the other sectors, communication, like I said, road and bridges, other areas. About 10 areas we identified that we want to develop, and we have already gone far with the NIBRI. They have the requisite laboratories, they have, and the Chartered Institute of Fraud and Forensic Investigation, they have the other aspect also. You know, so the three of us are going to sit down and develop, and very soon we'll start inviting people, even internationally, to come and be trained as engineering failures investigators, you know, in all aspects.
All right.
Now, this is one. Second, to be able to do the safety, like you said, looking at the other climbs, there are basically, I think, about three things I would like to also bring to bear. We must introduce the issue of insurance of our buildings.
Okay.
Just like he said, he has mentioned one. You know, how do we really get? How do we include the logistical support for supervision? In current, we have what we call ERMs in every state. That is engineering, regulation, monitoring, and enforcement committees in each state, which governors inaugurate. This has been in practice for the last 20 years. And these ERMs committees are saddled with exactly what DG mentioned, inspecting, engineering site, not only building, any other engineering endeavor that we are developing, an infrastructure, they must be there to controlling. Initially, we used to have the budget, but now, current has been excised from government budgeting, so we are on our own. So this is one area that we don't even know what to do now, because all the states, immediately they call us that there's a building collapse. They will ask our ERM to go and visit the site. We are on our own, and looking at the vastness of the country, looking at some few states do intervene. For instance, Lagos has given us a bus, the governor, to be able to assist that ERM because he has seen the value. We are always there in all the sites of, all the building sites and what have you.
Okay.
Now, this is one. Second, the issue of insurance, like I said, we must find a way to begin to insure our buildings, to also include in the total costing. And then thirdly, we must, in my view, begin to have what we call certification for habitation. When a building is delivered, like the DG said, it's a process that at the end of the day, the building has been delivered. We must introduce current called certification for habitation. We must go back, identify people that will come and certify, the integrity and the stability, whatever parameters we need to develop, so that that will take place in due process. Okay. And then the last one I want to mention in this regard, which is also in line with the other climb, is one aspect that we always often forget is the issue of maintenance. One of the critical factors of building collapse is negligence or abuse of maintenance. We must find a way to include this in terms of how do we assess or evaluate, the integrity of a building after 10 years, 5 years, so that we'll be able to now know, because often collapse are sometimes due to lack of maintenance or the use, if you like. You see, somebody in a building, 10-story building, it has a piping, for instance. There is a blockage, there is a leakage of water, and then a beam, or a column is affected for 10 years. It has been compromised, and then the building is being used, and maybe they have even converted the building to another use, like he said, either conversion or alteration of use after it has been done. So these are issues that we must include, in my view, and it is in the plan. When you have, among the documentation we have in the building process, there's what they call the buildability and maintainability plan of a structure. And that encapsulates this, what they call the issue of the safety and what have you. How often are we including this? In other climes, you see that a good percentage of the cost of a building has to do with maintenance. It is there. The issue of insurance, there's issue of certification for habitation of a building. So that,
particularly public buildings.
Yes, we now add to the issue of comparability. Who certified that this building is fit to be used, to be handed over to be used? If an organization has been identified and certified that yes, this building, and then we saw after 1 year, 2 years, there's a crisis. We know who to hold. In that wise. And so, in this regard, these are part of the safety standards
All right,
that we know
Professor
are
Mbaka,
applicable in other climes.
thank you, because we are running out of time. Let me get Engineer Lani involved at this point. What are those things, in your opinion, that we can learn, from international best practices in building safety and regulation?
Yes, we are learning on that already.
The ones we are not doing that we can do, because you will see
Yeah.
that the circumstance is not the same. Buildings don't collapse the way they collapse here like that. And even when they do, rarely you see the way it is dealt with.
Yes.
And that's why it doesn't happen
Yes,
often.
that's what I've just said, that we are learning. It's a learning curve. We are so worried about this collapse. Let me give you an example. The Nigerian Society of Engineers, they have a national committee on code and standard, which I'm privileged to be a member. This is being headed by Professor Popola of Imperial College London. We are trying to see, in the areas of codes and standards, we are working in hand with COREN and standard organizations of Nigeria.
Okay.
We are having meetings from time to time to see how to go about both tangible and untangible products. When we are talking of buildings, we have tangible product, untangible products. You have your cement reinforcement, which my big organs mentioned. Those are tangible. We have untangible ones. Those are the codes and standards of practice. For example, we are more dependent on British code. British code now, in the area of design, structurally, and to some extent, geotechnically, they have moved from that British standard to Eurocode, which is about 10 numbers, from 0 to 9. We are trying to see, what are we going to do in this area? Are we going to affiliate? Are we going to adapt? Like members of this Eurocode, apart from the main member that have voting rights, which is UK, Germany, France, and all the rest, they have affiliation members like Singapore, Malaysia. Then they have other countries like South Africa that they have adapted, rewrote all their codes in line with Eurocode. And that's what we call national annex. That is the temperate region over there compared to tropical. I don't think we have snow. I don't think maybe just, I wouldn't know. Maybe
You never know.
or maybe Obudu, or maybe Obudu. Yeah, maybe Obudu. Maybe they can have some element of that. Those are national annex that we have to customize. That here, okay, what are those areas? And in the Eurocode, would have made that provisions. There are two significant roles. We have what we call principles. We have what we call applications. When they mention principle, what they are telling you, don't have alternative for it. When they tell you applications, yes, they allow you to bring your own rules that is reasonable, that you can customize, that will fit in within your own environment. So we are copying. Then again, not that buildings don't collapse in the Western world too.
Not as much as it
Not
does here.
just,
Not anywhere
relatively,
near.
relatively. Some few years ago, that of Florida International Universities, that they are, this is their pedestrian bridge. One of the north snapped, and then this thing came down, killed a lot of people by smashing a lot of cars. We have others to some condominium that collapsed here and there. Yeah, we are not giving an excuse, or we are not taking glory in that or joy in that. But we are really moving to see how this can be brought close to zero.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Engineer Alini, there for bringing this, close to zero, just like you said. But Professor Duna, let me. I want you to just speak to two issues that Professor Abubakar raised: the issue of conversion of building from their original, You know, you find that because I lived all my life in Lagos, especially in Surulere area, before I was moved to Abuja about 5 years ago. And most of the buildings in Surulere, for instance, are supposed to be, residential. But you find out that most of the buildings now are commercial, turned to commercial and all that. And likewise in other parts of the country, like that, you change the original plan of the building and you now turn it to something else. And these are some of the reasons why we are having building collapses, because of the volume of activities, going on in the building, which was not originally factored, when, the plan was being structured.
Yeah.
So in your own observation and research, do you bring out this observation to government, and what has been the reactions when you talk about, conversion of, buildings and maintenance?
Thank you. I think, let me draw your attention with respect to a report NIBRI did on a building that collapsed with specific reference to Ibadan, Oyo, in Lagos Island,
Okay.
where 22 school children died. Part of what we discovered after our research was that it was a residential building converted to a school.
You see that?
Let me give you a glimpse of what residential and a public building is. Normally, when you are designing a building, there are what we call loadings that you capture based on the intended use of the building. A residential building has a low value of loads.
Yeah.
Then there are standards that you go along with it. A public building, depending on, is it a stadium, is it a hospital, is it a school, is it a theater, it has its own loading components different. When you are designing a building, there are two loads we considered. There is what we call a dead load, which are called permanent load, and that's another one called live load or imposed loads. These two loads are different. Residential building is different from public building. For instance, when you start with residential building, from this load, you design and you end up with member sizing. From the load, you do your design, you do your calculation, but the end product will give you sizes of each member, sizes of foundation, sizes of the columns, sizes of the beam, sizes of the slab. All these things you start from the load. Peradventure, you are designing a residential building, a smaller load. It will give you a smaller member sizing in line with the load. But if you want to convert a smaller thing to something big, how do you do it? It is out already. I don't know if I'm making myself. But if it is a public building, you want to convert it to residential, it looks easier because a big person converting it to a small person is adoptable. But from a small person, you want to convert it to a big person, very hard and very difficult. Part of what we discovered is that a residential building converted to a school, and the conversion was not done properly, and it ended up in building collapse. So it is wrong, totally condemned, and that is why the government body, like the State Development Board, a government body put in place, should be there to check from time to time. There should be visit.
That there's compliance.
There should be compliance, especially this idea of writing stop with paint, then somebody coming to paint it, so go and see them in the office, they'll allow you to continue. It is beyond that.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Duna. Professor Abubakar, we have just a few minutes to go. In 2 minutes, can you tell us how government at all levels can be held accountable for its own role or for their own roles, if you look at it variously, federal, state, local governments, in building safety?
But in the procedure, we have the agencies that allocate land, the town planning agency, and then what we call the development control offices that review and certify designs, and that also supposed to check the construction site to ensure enforcement and compliance. These are clear, there are clear roles and responsibilities of all these government bodies. one thing that I know is that the complement of professionals that are supposed to be in such offices is not there often. You find that because you ask the DG a question, how many people are supposed to be in a place? In a development office, you're supposed to have an engineer, an architect, a builder, a country. There complement about 7 of them. You find in many instances, the complement of these professionals that are well trained, licensed, registered to practice are not there. So the first thing we expect is that please and please, this complement of professionals need to be employed and need to be given responsibility to work. This is one. Second, we also expect that we need to supervise them, because we know often in many of these offices there is what they call syndicates. There are people that you just bring and they have the stamp and they'll be stamping, approve, 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 without due
Their
diligence.
job is just to stamp.
Yes, because there are money involved. And so that we need to open up. We need to, that's what we said, let us light that dark room. So these agencies at all levels, one is the personnel, we need to get them, train them, qualified, licensed, certified. Second is we need to supervise them diligently to ensure that they did their job.
Okay,
And thirdly, the professional bodies, regulatory bodies, like Corel, like ACON, like all of about 7 of us, we need to have a synergy with all these agencies at all levels to be able to deploy what the DG call the logistical support. As it is now, we are operating in silos.
Okay.
We don't have any synergy to be able to support.
Collaboration.
Yeah, to support the implementation of all that we have said here, with some logistical support. More so because many of us now have been removed from funding.
Okay.
So we are on our own.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very
Let's
much.
have a parting shot from Engineer Olani. Just in 30 seconds, what system do you think should be put in place for victims of building collapse?
Yeah, I think that would have been, it's more of policy, which my president and my DG would have answered better.
No, but as a professional, you have an idea what it could be.
Yes. I think DG mentioned something, or president, something on insurance.
Okay.
If whoever, the workers, including the clients, are properly insured
They will be taken
in
care
the
of.
contract, if it happens, they will be properly taken care of.
Okay, on that note, we want to say thank you very much for coming on the program. Engineer Fadeyi Olani, Principal Partner, FAD Progress Engineering Limited, Civil and Structural Engineer and Consultant. Thank you for your contribution.
Thank you, sir.
Also, we want to say a big thank you to Professor Samson Duna, Director General, Chief Executive Officer, Nigerian Building and Road Research Institute.
He was telling me he forgot to mention something that he could say
The
in 10
last point,
seconds.
very, very important.
Okay.
Please.
In 10 seconds, please.
Yes, I want to agitate, I want to call on structures, especially where the locality experiences bomb blasts. We should go for integrity tests.
Okay.
Before it is used again.
Integrity test is very, very important.
Yeah, okay.
If it is done, it will reduce building collapse.
Thank you very much, Professor Duna, for that,
Thank you.
for chipping in that. And finally, the president of Quran, Council for Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, Professor Sadiq Subal Abubakar. Thank you so much for your contribution today.
Thank you so much also for inviting me.
All right. That has been Good Morning Nigeria today, and thanks for being there. I am Ademola Adeye. Do have a lovely day.
All right. Just before we go, we regret that we couldn't bring you the second topic we had earlier advertised, which is the strengthening of contract negotiation of states. It's because we had to take this issue, which is all important for the whole of this episode. We thank you very much for watching. I am Victor, as we see you tomorrow.